Have you ever wondered why a woman can be so deeply into you one month, swearing you're everything she's ever wanted? And then a few weeks later, she's in the arms of someone else, smiling like you never existed. It's not always because she's heartless. It's because some women are wired, trained, or addicted to the rush of the new. They crave the emotional high of novelty, the same way some people crave a hit of adrenaline. And if you've ever been replaced seemingly overnight, you've felt the sting of realizing you were never the destination, you were just the ride to her next fix. Picture this, you're with her at a cafe. She's leaning in, laughing at your jokes. Her eyes locked on yours like you're the only man in the world. But what you don't see is that she's already scanning the room when you glance at your phone. Not obviously, not disrespectfully, just subtly. A glance here, a spark of curiosity there. And you'll miss it if you don't know what to look for. That's the thing about women drawn to constant new relationships. They're always keeping a door cracked open, just enough for someone new to step through. At first, it feels flattering. She tells you she's never met anyone like you. She texts constantly, wants to see you every day, and the attention is intoxicating. But here's the trap, that speed isn't connection, it's acceleration. And when someone moves that fast, they're not building a foundation, they're chasing a sensation. Once the high of novelty fades, they start scanning for the next spark. And if you mistake that intensity for commitment, you're setting yourself up to be blindsided. You'll see it in her patterns if you pay attention. She's quick to get deeply involved, but just as quick to detach. She might talk about exes in a way that sounds romantic, but what she's really doing is showing you her cycle, how she dives in, lives in the rush, and then burns out. It's not about you doing something wrong. It's about her needing the feeling more than the person. And if you're the one giving her that high, you're on a countdown you can't see. Here's where most men get trapped. They sense her interest dipping, and instead of pulling back, they double down. They text more, plan bigger dates, try harder to get her back to the way she was at the start. But you can't compete with the memory of her first dopamine hit. The harder you try, the faster she feels the thrill dying. And the moment she realizes you've stopped being new, she'll start emotionally stepping away, sometimes weeks before you notice. So what's the move when you see this pattern first? Stop chasing her highs. Don't match her pace when she floods you with attention at the start. Set the tone, early space, boundaries, a life that doesn't bend around her schedule. This is not about playing games. It's about resisting her attempt to pull you into her tempo. The man who controls the pace controls the frame, and if you slow it down, you force her to reveal whether she's in it for you or just for the rush. Second, watch for micro withdrawals. These are tiny shifts, slower replies, less eye contact, fewer physical touches. Don't react with panic or neediness. This is where indifference becomes your shield. If you pull back when she does, you signal that your worth isn't dependent on her engagement. Most men do the opposite, they lean in. But leaning in when she's leaning out just confirms to her subconscious that she has control. Pulling back flips the dynamic and forces her to consider your value all over again. And third, never be the guy who tries to convince her to stay. The moment you start campaigning for your own worth, you've already lost it. You can't sell yourself to someone who's addicted to the taste of something new. Instead, make it clear verbally or silently that you're not competing with anyone else for her attention. If she wants to wander, the door's open. The man who can say go ahead without anger or fear is the man she doesn't forget, because he's the one she couldn't break. I knew a guy who fell into this exact cycle. She swept him off his feet, told him she'd never felt this way before. 6 weeks later, she was just not feeling it and needed space. He begged, texted long paragraphs, tried to get her to meet up. 2 weeks later, she was posting photos with a new guy. The truth, she didn't leave because of him, she left because of her. And he made it worse by proving she'd chosen right to go. because nothing kills attraction faster for a woman like this than a man who's lost in the chase. You don't need to hate her for it, but you do need to recognize the pattern before you invest. If you notice she's had a string of short, intense relationships that all ended quickly, she's telling you who she is. Believe her. The way to protect yourself is not to try to change her, it's to decide from day one whether you even want to get on that ride. And if you do, know the price you're stepping into a cycle where you'll be replaced unless you keep your center, your boundaries, and your value without ever putting them in her hands. Have you ever been with someone who seemed all in at first but drifted away like you were never there? Did you try to get her back? Or did you let her go and looking back? What would you do differently? You start to notice it not in the big arguments, but in the small moments. The way she used to lean in when you spoke now becomes a casual glance at her phone. The way her texts used to have energy exclamation points, emojis, that eagerness you could almost feel now read like she's answering an email from a coworker. And here's the mistake that kills most men. They read these changes as a phase, something they can reverse if they just put in more effort. That's exactly what she's counting on, because the moment you start chasing, the dynamic shifts. You go from the man she was drawn to, the man who had his own gravity, to the man orbiting around her attention. And once she knows you're locked into her approval, you've given her permission to decide when and if you're valuable. This is why women drawn to constant new relationships are so dangerous if you're not grounded. They run on novelty. And novelty doesn't just mean a different man, it can mean a different version of you. She'll push for intensity in the beginning because it gives her that high. Then she'll pull away, consciously or not, to see if she can make you chase. That's the second high, watching you bend. You might think you're losing her because you said the wrong thing, because you didn't text at the right time, because you didn't romance her enough. But the truth is, you're losing her because she's wired to be more addicted to change than to connection. You're a fixed point now. And for a woman like that, a fixed point is the first step toward boredom. If you're sharp, you'll see the early cues. She laughs a little too long at the waiter's joke. She talks about a friend she just met but frames it as casual. She starts planting seeds comments about how crazy it is that people can just drift apart. Stories about friends who fell in love fast, but it didn't last. These are not harmless anecdotes. They're subtle rehearsals for her exit. The move here is not confrontation. If you try to pin her down, who's this guy? Why don't you text like before you hand her the victim card? Now you're the insecure one, the controlling one, the man she can paint as suffocating. The smarter play is observation without reaction. You don't ignore it, you note it, you adjust. You stop making her the center of your calendar. You stop feeding the emotional machine with constant validation. Men who survive this game don't win by fighting for her, they win by never depending on her to begin with. Your leverage is in your detachment, not coldness, not cruelty, detachment. You can still be warm, still be engaged, but your core isn't leaning forward, it's standing tall. You are in the relationship, but you are not of the relationship. I've seen men flip the script entirely just by pulling their focus off her and back onto themselves. One guy I know saw the signs early, slower replies, less enthusiasm. Instead of confronting her, he went back to his old hobbies, started going out without her, reconnected with friends. No drama, no speech, no, we need to talk. Within 2 weeks, she was the one initiating, texting him photos, trying to get his attention again. Why? Because she felt the emotional oxygen being pulled out of the room. And women who thrive on novelty can't stand to feel like they're no longer the most interesting thing in your life. But here's the warning, this only works if it's real. You can't fake detachment. If you're sitting at home scrolling her social media while pretending to be busy, she'll sense it. Your energy will still be reaching for her, and she'll still feel the safety of knowing you're locked in. The only way to break her cycle is to step out of it entirely, not in anger, not in revenge, but in a quiet return to your own life. And sometimes, the strongest move is to let her go without a fight. A woman chasing constant newness will always need another hit. You can't be her rehab. If you try, you'll just drain yourself while she's already lining up her next thrill. Letting her walk without resistance is not weakness. It's a message. It says, I'm not here to audition for your attention. That's the one line women like this rarely hear, and the one they never forget. Your role is not to convince her of your worth. Your role is to protect your worth by not offering it to someone who treats it like disposable entertainment. The moment you internalize that, you stop fearing her leaving, and that's when you become the man she can't control. Have you ever caught those early cues that a woman was mentally checking out? Did you pull back, or did you lean in? And if you could replay that moment, would you choose differently? There's a moment in every man's story with a woman like this where you realize you're not losing her, you've already lost her. She's sitting across from you at dinner, smiling, nodding at your words. But her eyes are somewhere else. Not wandering the room, not checking her phone, just gone. That's when the truth hits. She's already in the emotional space where she meets the next guy. She hasn't done it yet, but she's rehearsing the escape in her mind. If you've been there, you know the split-second instinct that follows panic. You start thinking of ways to pull her back. Maybe if you plan a special trip. Maybe if you remind her of all the good times. Maybe if you just talk it out. But here's the brutal truth. The more you try to bring her back to the US, you remember, the more you remind her of how far she's drifted. You're not reigniting the fire, you're showing her the ashes. Women drawn to constant new relationships have an internal clock. And it's not set to commitment, it's set to excitement. They start counting down from the moment they feel fully seen, because being fully seen means the mystery is over. And the irony, that's often the moment you feel closest to her. You think she's opening up because she feels safe, but to her, safety can feel like stagnation. She needs tension to feel alive, and if she can't find it in you anymore, she'll find it elsewhere. This is why you must become a man who generates tension naturally, without relying on her reactions. Tension doesn't mean drama, it means you remain slightly unpredictable, even in your patterns of affection. You don't give her every piece of you on demand. You don't answer every message instantly. You don't rearrange your plans every time she asks. That's not neglect, it's self-respect. A woman can only feel the thrill of earning you if there's something left to earn. The men who get cycled through by women like this all have one thing in common. They think the best way to keep her is to give her everything. But giving everything too fast is like skipping to the end of a movie. There's nothing left to discover. That's why she runs toward the next premiere while you're still trying to rewrite the ending. I remember a friend who was in deep with a woman like this. In the first month, she called him every night, told him she'd never been so connected to someone. By month 3, she was busy most weekends. By month 4, she was posting photos with a group of friends that didn't include him. He confronted her once she flipped it, accused him of not trusting her. He backed off, thinking giving her space would fix it. By month 5, she was officially with someone else. The lesson: you can't outpatient a woman who's already mentally moved on. So what do you do instead? You build a life so engaging, so full of your own pursuits, that her presence is an addition, not a replacement for your identity. If you catch her starting to drift, you don't double down on her, you double down on you. That might mean more time in the gym, more focus on your business, reconnecting with old friends, or pursuing skills you've neglected. The point is, you make your life harder to walk away from, not because she feels guilty, but because she realizes she's stepping out of something with gravity. And here's the thing, sometimes your detachment won't pull her back. Sometimes she'll leave anyway. That's when you'll face the ultimate test. Can you let her go without resentment? Can you hold your frame without trying to rewrite the past? Because if you can, you'll carry something far more valuable than her approval. You'll carry your dignity. And dignity is the one thing a woman can sense in a man long before she knows why she's drawn to him. The paradox of women who chase novelty is that they're attracted to the same qualities they eventually run from: mystery, self, possession, independence. If you maintain those qualities, you'll keep her interested longer. But if you lose them trying to secure her, you've already given her a reason to leave. That's why the real strategy isn't to win her back, it's to never lose yourself in the first place. Have you ever noticed how quickly things shift once you give someone everything they wanted? Did it make them appreciate you more, or start pulling away? And if you could go back, where would you have drawn the line? There's a cruel irony in how this plays out. The very things you did at the start, the confidence, the ease, the way you didn't try to impress her, were what made her lock onto you in the first place. But somewhere along the way, you traded those for comfort and certainty. You started checking in more, explaining yourself more, making sure she was happy before you were. And for a woman addicted to newness, that's the moment she begins emotionally packing her bags. Not because she hates you, but because the thrill is gone, and she's trained herself to chase the thrill above all else. The shift is so subtle you might miss it. She stops asking what you're doing this weekend, not because she's busy, but because she's already leaving space in her mind for someone else. She no longer mirrors your energy, she sets her own, and you follow it. That's the frame reversal, and it's lethal to attraction. She's not just drifting away, she's testing how much she can pull before you notice. And when you finally do, you'll realize you've been reacting to her instead of leading. You have to understand something about this kind of woman. She thrives in transition. The space between one man and the next is her hunting ground. It's where she gets to rewrite her story, where she's the one who outgrew the last guy, the one who finally met someone who understands. She feeds off that narrative because it makes her feel in control. And the man she's leaving, he's too busy trying to figure out what went wrong to see that nothing went wrong. This is just her cycle. The tactical mistake men make here is thinking they can disrupt that cycle by being better than the next guy. You can't. The next guy isn't better, he's just new. And the second you try to compete with newness, you've already lost. The only move that works is to remove yourself from the game entirely. That means you stop being an option for her highs and lows. You stop being the safety net she falls back on between relationships. You stop letting her re-enter your life when she's bored. One man I know mastered this to perfection. She tried to come back after 2 months, saying she'd been confused and needed to figure herself out. He didn't get angry. He didn't give her a lecture. He just said, "I'm glad you found clarity. I'm not available for where you're at." No begging, no bitterness. And you know what? She tried harder to get back with him than she tried to keep the new guy. Why? Because she'd lost control of the script. He didn't play the role she'd written for him. That's the kind of power you need, not the power to keep her, but the power to walk away without hesitation. Because here's the truth. A woman who constantly needs new relationships isn't looking for a man to grow with. She's looking for a man to grow bored of. You can't change that wiring. You can only decide if you want to be the next chapter in her short stories, or the man she never quite figured out. The challenge is resisting your own ego. It's tempting to want to be the one who made her stay. But that's just as much a trap as chasing her when she pulls away. The real strength is being willing to let her curiosity about you remain unsatisfied. Let her wonder what you're doing, who you're with, whether you've moved on. That mystery, the one you had before you gave her all of you, is the only currency that holds its value with women like this. And the best part, that mystery isn't something you fake. It's built naturally when your life is full without her, when you're building, creating, exploring, and leading in your own lane. You don't have to manufacture distance. It happens because you're genuinely busy living. And that kind of life doesn't just make you harder to leave, it makes you harder to replace. Have you ever had someone try to come back after they left you for someone new? Did you take them back? Or did you hold the line, and looking back, would you make the same choice again? Here's the part most men don't want to hear if a woman has a habit of jumping from one relationship to another. It's not about you, and it's not about the guy she's with now. It's about her need for that emotional reset. She thrives on the sensation of being chosen all over again. The butterflies, the flirty banter, the dopamine hit from someone new telling her she's special. Those are her fuel. And once that initial rush fades, she needs a refill. You can't be the refill. You can't even be the container. You're just the temporary source. You'll know she's in that phase when her compliments start to feel recycled. She says the right words, but the warmth behind them is gone. She still kisses you, still holds your hand, but the spark in her eyes is missing. And here's the trap she won't leave immediately. She'll hover. She'll keep just enough intimacy alive to keep you hoping. That's because she's not ready to be fully alone while she scouts for her next fix. You become the bridge between her last thrill and her next one. And if you're not careful, you'll make that bridge as comfortable as possible. You'll try to reignite things with romantic gestures, long talks, or sudden changes to win her back. But the more you try to secure her, the more she feels the walls closing in. To her, that's not love, it's suffocation. And suffocation is the quickest way to push her into the arms of someone else who feels fresh. So how do you respond without falling into that spiral first? You recognize the signs without taking them personally. Her pattern existed before you, and it will exist after you. That means you stop looking for ways to prove yourself to her, and you start looking at whether you want to be part of this cycle at all. The moment you stop trying to save the relationship is the moment you reclaim the leverage. Second, you create emotional distance before she forces it. That doesn't mean being cold or hostile. It means reclaiming the independence you had before she entered your life. You go back to your hobbies, your work, your fitness, your friends. You stop updating her on your every move. You stop asking for her approval. This is where most men fail. They keep her as their top priority even when they're no longer hers. That imbalance is what drains them. Third, you hold the frame when she tests your boundaries, and she will test them. Maybe she disappears for a night without explanation, just to see how you'll react. Maybe she mentions another man's name a little too casually. These are hooks designed to pull you into a jealous or needy state. The right move. Non-reactive acknowledgement. You note it, but you don't bite. You don't play the role of the insecure boyfriend. You play the role of the man who is not dependent on her choices for his own stability. I knew a man who did this perfectly. His girlfriend started pulling back, cancelling plans, being vague about her whereabouts. Instead of confronting her in anger, he simply stopped making her the center of his week. He still saw her, still enjoyed their time, but he filled the rest of his schedule with his own pursuits. When she tried to bait him with subtle jealousy, he just smiled and changed the subject. Within weeks, she was back to chasing him not because he manipulated her, but because he reminded her of the man she fell for, one who didn't orbit her. The truth is, a woman who constantly seeks new relationships is in a perpetual state of emotional auditioning. Every man she meets is a role she wants to try on. The tragedy is, she never stays in the role long enough to experience the deeper connection that only comes after the novelty fades. You can't give that to her if she doesn't want it. And if you try to force it, you'll only drain yourself while she's already rehearsing her next escape. So the real question isn't, how do I keep her? It's, do I even want to go? Do you want to invest your time, energy, and heart into someone who treats relationships like disposable entertainment? Or do you want to be the man who attracts women who can actually build, who see stability as exciting instead of suffocating? She won't change because you love her harder. She won't stay because you prove you're different. She'll only stay if she decides that depth matters more than novelty. And that decision is hers, not yours. Your job is to stand so firmly in your own value that you never fear her leaving. That's the position of strength. That's where you stop being a participant in her cycle and start being the man she can't cycle through. Have you ever realized mid-relationship that you were just a chapter in her story? Did you try to rewrite the ending? Or did you close the book? And if she came back tomorrow, would you open it again? She didn't break you. She revealed what you were too afraid to protect.